culture wars now playing a role in funding the government. You're watching Outnumbered Overtime. I'm Harris Faulkner. House Democrats are targeting Confederate statues in the draft of a new spending bill, seeking the removal of statues and busts at the U.S. Capitol of those who have quote-unquote unambiguous records of racial intolerance. The showdown looms as President Trump has made these culture wars a major 2020 issue by vowing to protect U.S. monuments, as he's also now hitting two sports teams weighing name changes over concerns about racial insensitivity. The president tweeted this: "They name teams out of strength, not weakness. But now the Washington Redskins and Cleveland Indians, two fabled sports franchises, look like they are going to be changing their names in order to protect, or rather to be politically correct. Indians like Elizabeth Warren must be very angry right now." Exclamation point. Obviously, facetiousness in his tweet there. But the point of all of this, and we were talking about this last hour, we're going to get into it just shortly with Kellyanne Conway, who'll join me, the counselor to the president at the White House. The point of all of this is, does it politically work? Does it work for Democrats and Republicans to be going at each other over this on the Hill, and then for the president also to see it as a way to connect with voters? Kellyanne Conway joins me now. Kellyanne, as you step in, I'm filling in the audience on where we are with the so-called culture wars. Does this work for the president?
Well, look, he didn't start this argument. People are trying to shame people from their jobs. They're disagreeing with any dissent. They're trying to cancel individuals. And it's mostly people who choose to live their lives online, not offline. I choose to live my life mostly offline. Harris, we have an increasing number of Americans who think everything that's online is real and that it's up to them to know what's in everybody's heart. Twist one word here or one thing that was done 40 years ago there. And I think the president's broader point is that he's looking towards the future. He's a visionary. He's being positive and patriotic. And here's my main problem with cancel culture, ripping down statues and the whole like. How does it get one more kid of color who's in a failing school a better opportunity, better education? These same people who are saying cancel culture, rip down statues, take away portraits in Statuary Hall, they always vote against opportunity scholarships here in Washington, D.C., which help African-American Hispanic kids. They don't vote for tax cuts and the Jobs Act, which are helping those children's parents and eventually will help them. You know, in Commonwealth of Pennsylvania alone, let's take one state. We had Janiyah and her mother as our guest at the State of the Union this year. Janiyah is one of 50,000 school children in one state, Pennsylvania, on a waiting list for an opportunity scholarship, school choice. You have the Democratic governor vetoing that. Why? Why are people like that standing in the schoolhouse door, not allowing kids to exit for a better opportunity? So one of my major objections with all of this is that it's easier to talk and squeal and complain and bellyache belligerently and lie lasciviously than to actually help people.
So as you talk about that, this is also coming up in the military right now, so I want to get to this. Defense Secretary Mark Esper must now decide whether to ban the display of the Confederate flag on U.S. military bases and ships after the service chiefs made the unanimous recommendation to do so. I want to know what his reaction to this is as well, because this is now part of this broader conversation, as you say, that we're having about cancel culture.
It is a broader conversation. I noted that 5 years ago, the president, as candidate Trump, talked about maybe putting Confederate flags in museums so people would learn from history. He very recently, I think just today in a different interview, said it's also a freedom of speech issue. But look, I think we should all welcome these conversations. There's no question that we should welcome these conversations. And Secretary Esper and those in the military will make the decisions as they see fit. But again, let's distinguish between talking and walking, between reviewing and doing. And there are so many people in this country in dire need, Harris, that if we're talking about this, not we, just you and me,
right,
and patting ourselves on the back that, look what we did, we ruined this person's life, we ruined that industry's future and customer base, it doesn't help. Look at all the relief in a bipartisan fashion we've gotten out of Washington.
Here, though, because I want to turn the wheel just a little bit here to go deeper. So the president says that this, just recently you said with another interview, freedom of speech issue in terms of the Confederate flag on ships and in the military, so on and so forth. And in this broader issue, how do we focus in on helping people? Is he going to get there with this issue? Is he going to say, let's put this aside and let's focus, as you have done, on the things that really matter?
Well, look at 3 o'clock this afternoon. You'll have the President, First Lady, Second Lady, and Vice President of the United States. I'll be there as well at the table talking about safely reopening our schools. Harris, I can't think of anything more important for us to focus on as a nation. And I would ask some of those states that open bars, do we want to open bars now or schools in 6 or 7 weeks? I vote for schools in 6 and 7 weeks. They are the central nervous system of our entire nation, our nation's economy, our parents. These parents need to get back to work. The kids aren't all safe at home. We saw a tremendous digital divide laid bare at the end of the school year when millions of kids did not have the digital assets they needed to learn. We see mental health challenges increasing, spousal abuse, child abuse, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, isolation. These kids need structure. We need to get them back to school. And so that's something, just by way of example.
I've been asking.
Yes.
How did we have weed dispensaries open in certain
No,
parts of the
exactly.
country before we were looking
as
at
essential businesses.
But
that's right. Well, I was answering your question, Harris, about will the president put this aside and talk about important things. I was just saying in less than 2 hours, we'll be doing that. Yes.
Okay. I do have a quick follow-up to you, though, because I've been asking about this. I did an education town hall, couldn't get her for this. Is the education secretary, DeVos, going to be there? Because
yes, she will.
It would have been nice to hear from her along the journey, too.
She's been very active, actually, and she's been with the president. She came to Milwaukee with the vice president and me and some others to celebrate the 30th anniversary of school choice. The secretary also has a very important plan. She has emergency relief for some of our non-public schools, and also education freedom scholarships are making their way through the House and the Senate. Those would help, again, non-public students to stay in those schools. We have lots of Catholic schools closing, non-public schools that don't get, as they do in D.C., $30,000 per student, and not the performance for those poor kids. They deserve better, for sure. So we're trying to make sure that our non-public schools stay as an option for many of these parents and grandparents. Look, the president is so great on school choice, and we have tripartisan support in the polls. Democrats, Independents, Republicans all support it. We have African Americans, Hispanic Americans, millennials, vast majority of them saying they support school choice. Why, Harris? Because it's just about providing additional options. This president has said if we can dig out the Panama Canal, win 2 world wars, put a man on the moon, we ought to be able to deliver quality education for each student, and we're here for that reason.
Yeah, I'm curious if also, because a lot of parents are concerned, and I know I've heard the president and members of the administration say, well, children are less likely to get COVID-19, but certainly having task members or some sort of guarantee of safety measures at your coming event at 3 p.m. Eastern would be important too. Last question. Fox News has obtained a copy of that new book by the president's niece. It includes this conversation by Mary Trump, says she had with the president's sister, her Aunt Marianne Trump Barry. Quote, "We thought the blatant racism on display during Donald's announcement speech would be a deal breaker, but we were disabused of the idea that when white evangelicals started endorsing him, Marianne, a devout Catholic, was incensed. What the," and she used a dirty word here, we'll just say expletive, "is wrong with them," she said. "The only time Donald went to church was when the cameras were there. It's mind-boggling. He has no principles." What's your reaction, or the reaction from the White House, to this book that's coming out?
I'll say a few things. One is that Marianne Trump Barry, the president's sister and the president, have a great relationship as far as I can see, meaning she came to the inauguration almost 2 years after the announcement. And I believe family matters should be family matters. I think the thin-skinned, troubled, living in glass house mainstream media members who think people's families are their business ought to really think thrice the next time they do that. This is like every other book out there, in my view, which is we imbue instant credibility onto anybody, especially those not under oath and writing works of fiction, perhaps, or fiction within a work of fiction, as long as they're out there to get the president. I think reporters ought to focus on getting the story, not getting the president. That's what they're supposed to be doing. The other thing I would just say is something I do know about with respect to Mary Trump's late father, Fred Jr., and the way this president, his brother of 10 years younger, Donald Trump, feels about him. This president got so committed to cracking down on the drug epidemic in our country, inspired first and foremost by the struggles of his own older brother, Fred Jr., who he has complimented as being so handsome and so full of life and so talented and so smart, and the heir to the family business as the oldest son, as the oldest child, and that he watched him die of alcoholism at 42. And the president has very publicly said something I've heard privately any number of times, publicly said, Harris, that Donald Trump watching his own brother struggle is why Donald Trump has never touched a drug, had a drop of alcohol, had a drag of a cigarette his entire life. And I've seen him in private settings tell children Don't do that. And so he has committed himself, as has the First Lady. Drug addiction is the public policy issue they work on together. And I think that's what we should take from this president and his memory of his brother. I think there are too many books out there that are never fact-checked. Now we're repeating a conversation that somebody's saying they had with somebody else who isn't even in her own voice in a book. So
well, we see a lot of books.
I'll leave it at that. Yes, I'll leave it at that. Mine will be great one day. You'll love it. I'll come back on and talk about my book one day.
With plenty of pictures from New Jersey.
And
no
a
doubt.
sequel, yes.
All right. Good to see you. Thank you.